Hi everyone, it's Andy here from IELTS LMS again, and today I'm going to talk about planning lessons using IELTS LMS. Now this is a question which comes up quite often in meetings about how you can integrate IELTS LMS into the classroom. So I just want to go through not an IELTS lesson as such, but just an English lesson. This one is on persuasive presentations, just to give you some ideas about how you can use the platform to teach a lesson and teach a hybrid lesson or a blended lesson. So that is partly offline, where teachers are either face-to-face or online face-to-face in a Zoom, and partly self-learning, so students at home working by themselves. So I'm not going to make the whole lesson because that takes too long, but I'm just going to go through the steps and the process that's involved in doing this. And I think we'll probably have a webinar on this going forward to show you how to do it in more detail and get some more ideas from you as well. So this is going to be a hybrid lesson on persuasive presentations, as it says here in this doc. This is just my very brief plan that I've got in the document here. A few important things to talk about, the overview of the methodology. So if you're doing a hybrid lesson, if you're teaching partly face-to-face, either in a classroom or online, and partly offline, then it's really important to maximize the time that you spend with students. So what do you need to do in the classroom? And what do you need to do outside the classroom? We'll just use those terms here. So classroom could be online class or physical class, and then outside the classroom is students working by themselves. So to maximize this face time, you need to do things like brainstorming, discussion, talking about difficult stages in a reading or a listening, and you leave tasks which the students spend a long time on by themselves for their own work. So if they're writing an essay, they do that at home. You don't want them to do that in class. If they're practicing a speech, and even giving a speech, it might not be the best thing to do in a classroom setting. Many teachers like to do presentations in the classroom. I personally don't like it because usually you have one person doing something and everyone else doing nothing, and it gets very boring very quickly for people. So my personal preference is not to do presentations in a class. And generally speaking, there's people sick in the office here, working through their illnesses, not COVID, I hope. So generally speaking, readings and listenings, if they're short, you can do them in class. But if they're longer, like the IELTS questions, they're an hour long, you don't really want to be doing that in class. But you can set up the IELTS LMS quizzes for as long as or as short as you want. You'll find that the readings and listening and mastering IELTS are only 6 to 10 questions long, so they can be done fairly quickly. So methodology, maximize the face time. Make the best use of the face time as you can. So this class, persuasive presentations, my objective, I know this at the beginning, my objectives is I want my students to give a 5-minute persuasive presentation on a controversial topic. Controversial topics are easier to do. When there's lots of argument or disagreement about things, they're easier to plan. So typical topics would be the death penalty, legalizing drugs, euthanasia, those sorts of things. And how am I going to assess this? Well, and what's the outcome of this? I could either have it recorded on IELTS LMS, audio only, so I could just do a speech, or I could ask students to do a video at home. That would save class time for more important things. Or I could do it live in the classroom. Now, that's important sometimes because doing a presentation live gives the added fear of students when they do a presentation. So it can be important to do that. And if you do it live, you can also make much more use of visual aids using PowerPoint presentations, using whiteboards and focusing on body language and doing those sorts of things. So the tools for this lesson, I'm going to be using IELTS LMS and Google and YouTube, basically. The structure. So what I need to do in this lesson is I need to be able to introduce the task and the assessment to the students. They need to know what they have to do and how they're going to be assessed. I need some inputs. I need to give them some knowledge, and I'm going to do that through reading and listening. I need to make sure they understand that knowledge. So I'm going to give them some comprehension exercises on IELTS LMS, and I'm going to ask them to do some analysis, and that will lead into discussion and writing tasks. And after that, some brainstorming and outlining. I'm going to do this in groups because group work is very communicative, and it's more interesting, and it cuts down on the individual attention that you have to give to your students and allows you to work with groups, which is nice. And then we're going to do the production. Sorry, I've spelled audio wrong. Audio. So the students are going to produce something, an audio, a video, or a live production. And then some reflection, either reflection on what other people have done, or some self-reflection on what they did, or some reflection on the process that we went through and what they could have done better in the process, or how the process indeed could be better. It's always good to get feedback from students. So that's the structure that I need to keep my mind on. And how do I prepare this? So pick the task and the assessment. Now I've done that already. I've said it's going to be a 5-minute persuasive presentation on a controversial topic, and the assessment is going to be, I would do this on IELTS LMS, and I would use the speaking rubric to do this because I would just be after a speech. If you do video, you can design a new rubric which takes into account body language and things like that, but that is obviously flexible. So I've got my task and my assessment. Now, more specifically, I want my students to learn about Monroe's motivational sequence, and I want them to think about Aristotle's elements when they do their persuasive presentation. So these are my inputs. This is what I require them to study, to build knowledge on and understand in order to do the task. So I need to find appropriate inputs. Monroe's motivated sequence, there's lots of stuff on YouTube. So what I would do is I would just search for Monroe's motivated sequence. There's lots of stuff on here, as you can see, lots of explanations of it. If you don't know what it is, it's worth looking at. It's a persuasive structure. It's a structure for being persuasive. And it's nice and it works well, and it's nice for the students to have a framework to build on. So this you could turn into a listening. You could take the video, you could use the video itself, or you could extract the audio and you could make an audio on IELTS LMS. You've seen this before. So you could make a listening quiz here just using the audio and a transcript, which is easy to do these days with AI. The transcripts exist on YouTube a lot of the time. You just have to take out the spaces. And you could make up 5, 10 multiple choice questions just to test the students' understanding. Not to test vocabulary or grammar, but do they understand it? Okay. So I would do that first of all. If I chose this one, for example, this guy talks about what it is. You'll see down here in these 3 dots on YouTube, show transcript. I know that's hidden behind my head, but there's a show transcript button. And this shows you the transcript for the video. So you can take this out and you can copy it to a document. You'll need to either remove the spaces and the timings manually, or you can use ChatGPT or something to do that. These days it makes it quicker. And then you can use that for your transcript when you come to make your IELTS listening quiz. This is going to be quite short. It's only a 5-minute 10 minute video. So you could do this in class, and altogether the students would probably take another 10 minutes maybe to answer the questions, 5 or 10 minutes to answer the questions. So you could then go through this in class. If you wanted to do this for homework, or indeed if you're setting it up so it could be done for homework, you can put in the location information and the explanations for the answers as well, in case they want to do it offline, away from you. So that's their input on Munro's motivated sequence. That's what I want them to use for this persuasive presentation. The other thing I wanted them to use, I didn't write it down here, but I wanted them to understand Aristotle's elements. Now, again, you may or may not have heard of these, but a quick Google search. Aristotle's elements of persuasion: logos, pathos, ethos. So these are things that Aristotle said, if you have these, you are more likely to be persuasive. Logos is about logic. Is your argument logical? Does it make sense? Pathos is about your connection with the audience. And ethos is about your credibility. So if you've got some kind of credibility, if you're believable, and if you are able to make a connection with your audience, and if you're logical in your arguments, you are more likely to be persuasive. So I want my students to understand that, so I can get a reading. There's lots and lots of readings on here. I can make a reading quiz, again, on IELTS LMS. 5, 10 multiple choice questions just to make sure they've read it and understood it. I can do this fairly quickly in class, or I could do it outside of class as well, just like the listening. So I've told them what I want them to do. I've given them some inputs about Munro and Aristotle. And before I let them launch into the task itself, I want them to do some analysis. So you'll see when you go back to the YouTube, there are examples. So there's one here, persuasive speech using Munro. Again, there's loads on here. So what you can do is you could set up a writing exercise, and it's easy to do here. I did this with a writing on slam poetry the other week. Basically, you can embed a video into your writing task and watch the video and summarize. So I can show a video and I can ask the students to, okay, have a look at this in relation to Munro's motivated sequence and Aristotle's elements. And can you go through that and can you write me a summary of that persuasive presentation and pick out those parts for Munro and those parts for Aristotle. So some analysis which really helps them understand. Okay, so hopefully by this stage they've got some a good understanding of what it actually is. So now it's their turn to set about the task. I like to do group work, pair work and group work as much as possible because it is very communicative, and brainstorming and outlining can be done together, and there's far more ideas are produced that way, and critical thinking happens, you know, people discussing whether an idea is a good one or a bad one, and so it's really nice to do that at this stage. So, and it's great to do in class. It's great for a teacher. You can really monitor what's going on and find out if the students actually understood the reading and the listening, and help them if they need help. So I would set up some brainstorming and outlining in groups tasks. Brainstorm what they want to do. If it's on euthanasia, what does that mean? What are the pros? What are the cons? Are you going to be for it or are you going to be against it? This is a persuasive argument, persuasive speech, so you have to pick a side. You have to think about the counter arguments. You have to think about how you're going to build your credibility, your ethos, how you're going to make a connection with the audience, your pathos, and how you're going to structure your argument logically, your logos. So you need to think about all those things, and it's good to do it in a group. Once the students have done that, which is very much a FaceTime, a class time, a Zoom time activity, Then they can go off with their outlines and they can do that task of writing a script, practicing, and then delivering that in whichever way they want, either audio or video, or if it's live, you're going to give them some time to come back and practice and then come and present in the next class or something like that. And once they've done that, once they've finished that, then you can grade and assess their work. But we get to the reflection stage. So here the students can reflect. They can do some self-reflection. If you give them a rubric, they can say, okay, what did I do well? What did I do? We don't say badly. We say, what could I have done better? They can do this individually or in pairs. It's often nice to look at other people's. Often we're very hard on ourselves. And so doing something with someone else can give you a more balanced overview of whether you've done well or not so well. So some reflection or self-reflection, and also of the process. Did you follow the process? Could you have followed the process better? If you'd done something differently, would it have worked out better? Or can you suggest to your teacher a better process which would work better for you and your class? Teachers always want feedback, hopefully, and this is a good way to get honest feedback from students, saying, how could you have done it better? What did you need? What did I leave out? And that's it. So that's really how you can run a class, hybrid class, using IELTS LMS as a fantastic learning tool for the inputs, the reading and the listening, and for summarizing, like writing some outputs, and also the speaking outputs. That's all I'm going to talk about today. There are a couple of blogs on this on IELTS LMS, planning online classes to be effective and enjoyable, and planning lessons using premium courses. So there's some more details there and some more background if you want to have a look at those. I hope that is useful. I really want people to start using IELTS LMS, not just for practice tests, but for teaching, and see the value of it for teaching. So please have a go at that. If you've got any comments, get in touch with us and let us know. I think I'm going to do a webinar on this sometime soon, so hopefully you can be around for that, and we can discuss these things in more detail. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. See you next time.